So assalamu alaikum and welcome, Ambassador Husam.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum to everybody. Thank you, Zara, for having us and having this very important conversation.
No, absolutely. Now, I know that for a lot of us, it has been tough, but I can't imagine for you particularly how tough it has been being on the front line. Your family is in Gaza and you have been an onslaught of media and all the different things that you have to do. But I think for many of the audience here today, it'd be great to just hear, what is happening on the ground right now, what is going on, and from your point of view, where is the situation at?
Well, first, allow me, Zara, to thank the MCB and your wonderful team for this relentless effort since the beginning of the aggression and the situation, and bringing out the truth and mobilizing and organizing the community. This is very much needed, and today's event and this very serious number of those who really want to contribute is a testament of your hard work and representation of the community. Of course, the situation on the ground is catastrophic. It's catastrophic in every sense of the word. It's mayhem, it's chaos, it's carnage. The number of dead is those who were killed by Israel are around 5,800 only in the last 2 weeks. More than 700 people were killed only in the last 24 hours alone. There are more than 16,000 injured. 1 million people have been displaced. Israel has brought terrible destruction on Gaza. Homes flattened, as you are all following. Churches, medical centers, mosques, hospitals, schools have all been bombed. And the humanitarian situation is simply unprecedented. According to Oxfam, a UK NGO, Israel has cut fuel, electricity, food, and water to everyone in Gaza now. The health sector is collapsing, and in some areas has already collapsed. Doctors at the Indonesian hospital had to treat patients in the dark yesterday. There was a blackout in the hospital. They ran out of fuel for their generators to generate electricity. And doctors at other hospitals had to operate on injured people without anesthesia. Heartbreaking images. And according to estimates, there are less than 2 days worth of fuel left in Gaza, less than 2 days in all of Gaza hospitals. Some of them have already run out. And once they do run out, they run out of power. And once they run out of power, you're talking about another and a new level of catastrophe. There is 130 premature babies in Shifa Hospital on incubators. There are patients in intensive care before even the latest events. All these people's lives are in imminent danger as we speak. Water and sanitation services have broken down, completely broken down, leading people to having to drink contaminated water, salty seawater, and be at serious risk. And we hear from international organizations, from the UN, from several who follow the issue and have presence on the ground, that there is a serious and real risk of infectious disease like cholera, a serious risk of an outbreak of these sort of diseases in a situation where there is no medical sector, contaminated water, the sewage system are untreated and at large, and therefore this is really undescribable, unconscionable. People are huddled together, dozens, if not hundreds, to one house, including my own sister, by the way. She hosts now around 150 in a small house that was supposed to be only enough for her family. And they share water, they share food as best as they can with rationing these very scarce resources. We are in a time and an age when an entire population don't have water, food, electricity, and what have you. UN schools are flooded, and we are in touch with UNRWA and many of the UN representatives, flooded with homeless and destitute people. And it is not just Gaza, by the way, my friends. Let me be clear here. Nearly 100 Palestinian people have been killed in the West Bank in the last 2 weeks, as settler violence and terrorism once again is unleashed, completely unleashed. And the Israeli military steps up raids every day in several various West Bank cities. Israel even used a warplane to bomb Jenin only on Sunday, and an Apache helicopter killed 10 people in Tul Karim, Ain Shams refugee camp, including 3 children on the same day. In Jerusalem, our people are being subjected to ever harsher restrictions, not at least, of course, or not least at Al-Aqsa Mosque, where many more than usual are now prevented from praying at the mosque. And you all know what Jerusalem means to the Palestinian people and to millions of people all over the world. These provocations are very serious all over the occupied West Bank. The Israeli government has armed its civilians, and you can follow the so-called Minister of National Security, Ben Gvir, is handing machine guns to illegal settlers living all over the occupied territories. This is very serious and very dangerous. They are causing havoc all over the occupied West Bank, and this too will only get worse. Today, it is 100 killed, 100 Palestinians killed by Israel, I mean in the West Bank. Tomorrow, it could get much higher, much higher. And therefore, our eyes should also be on the West Bank. It is tragic, it is awful, and the world watches. We are all watching, saying now it is not the time for ceasefire. Some governments are telling us this is not the time for a ceasefire. Now is not the time. This is really unconscionable. Unconscionable. There must be an immediate ceasefire, immediate, to allow for humanitarian aid to enter and to end the widespread mass killings. And this is our position. And we have been engaging the senior officials, ministers, secretaries here with this message. This ceasefire has to be unconditional. People have the right to be protected. Humanitarian aid must start flowing as required in Gaza, not just some tokenish number of trucks. And anyway, any amount of aid without a ceasefire will not reach its designated destinations. You know, we have a huge number of people who are still under the rubble. They are unable to rescue them. Medical staff have been targeted, and therefore the ceasefire is a necessity also, not only to stop the killings and to stop these atrocious, murderous airstrikes by Israel, but also to allow for the rescue of those who have been already targeted. And therefore, what is happening right in front of our eyes is simply not a natural disaster. It's a human made. It's deliberate, and it amounts to war crimes and crimes against humanity. And we have lawyers in this conversation, and I would be very keen to hear their opinion. Our very first priority, therefore, must be to stop this madness, this carnage, this mass killing, this mass expulsion, this mass destruction of our people.
No, I mean, I think all of us have been witnessing this distressing scenes, graphic scenes, you know. Now we're seeing a change in the narrative towards, oh, well, there's a humanitarian catastrophe and disaster. And as you said, we know what the cause of that is, you know, this kind of free reign for the Israeli government to just, you know, basically go and take Gaza under siege. And as you said, it's spreading much wider now. A big concern here in the UK, what many of our communities and affiliates are saying is like, you know, we agree with you. Everybody understands what the solution is. There needs to be an immediate ceasefire. And without it, there can't be any meaningful action in terms of humanitarian aid. As you said, the civilians there are really just desperate in terms of support, you know, families, babies, children. But one important question that a lot of people asked us was around activism here in the UK. And we've seen that there have been attempts from leadership, political leadership, the Home Secretary notably, to stifle pro-Palestinian activism. We've seen this kind of dehumanization of Muslims. We've seen this, trying to conflate pro-Palestinian activism with anti-Semitism or hate crime, all these different things. I mean, you've been at the front line. We've seen you in the marches and the demos. You've been in all the different spaces where people are actively campaigning. And this isn't just Muslims, this goes far beyond all of our communities. And a lot of people ask us, how can we advocate for the people of Palestine here today in the UK? And the UK is a big power and force in this conversation. What can we do that is meaningful? People are feeling very hopeless sometimes, very reluctant. They want to disengage. They want to, what can we do? And I think your role as ambassador, you obviously have to work within lots of different structures, lots of different stakeholders. So I guess it'd be really great to hear from you a message in terms of what can everybody here do to support the cause that you are fighting every day?
By using all means available to you in a democracy. A democracy does provide many means. First, to donate to the humanitarian efforts. This is unprecedented, unseen before. And there are many excellent, decent British organizations like Medical Aid for Palestine, for instance, that will deliver aid to those who need it the most. And MAB and others have presence on the ground. Several UK institutions have presence on the ground. So donation is very important because the situation is really alarming. Engage in your communities, to all communities, to spread awareness about what is happening. I mean, it's very important because for many years, people have been literally blocking the public opinion from what actually is happening. And this links to your previous remarks about media. We need to talk to our neighbors, to our friends, to our congregations, to our church groups, to schools, everybody. We must engage and have a conversation. We must talk to our local councillors, talk to local representatives, write letters. Letters matter. I, as an ambassador, know that when I receive repeated calls by an MP, I know that MP has received several letters, and that's what instigates or motivates much of their action. Therefore, letters is very important. In these letters, they must know what is your opinion and how do you feel and what is your, what do you expect from your representative? Tell them this is about human rights. Denied too long. Nobody can argue with that. This is about human rights. Tell them no person of conscience can any longer deny the Palestinian people our freedom. But tell them that there is nothing that justifies what is happening right now in Gaza. I just tweeted about a premature baby, unnamed, who was, rescued from his mother because she was still pregnant with him. She was, in her home, and she was bombarded. And I couldn't name him. I named him Naji, which means survival. He lost all of his family. Now he's in an incubator. And we don't know if this whole situation continues, if Naji will actually be Naji, if Naji will survive, if he stays in the incubator. So, we need to make these things clear. Nothing justifies this, nothing. So there is nothing that we should hide, or there's nothing we should fear. And to tell that with a very clear language. No one should be above international law. No one should be above international humanitarian law, especially at times of war. There are no exceptions to rules. Use the argument that this country is renowned for one thing, the rule of law. And the basic argument about the rule of law, it is applied equally. That's the fundamental, and I know Tayab Ali is here with us and many other lawyers. The fundamental premise of law is its equal application. So we have a lot to say and share and push for and pressure for. No person of conscience can stand by and watch whole families being wiped out. Hospitals, an entire people in an entire geographic location being starved. I mean, what? In what logic? How? Who can defend this? Who can defend this? An entire city, an entire region is being destroyed completely. And tell them this is a matter of fundamental principles, the principle of equality. And tell the people that, you are citizens here. That's why I started by saying there are many options in a democracy, including, that you choose your politicians. And take the streets to show your support. Yes, demonstrations matter. The last Saturday's demonstration was very well heard all over the UK and by politicians. 300,000, 300,000. And I was so proud that the 300,000 marched with pride and dignity, peacefully, legally, making sure that they maintain the law and order. This is the supporters of Palestine. But do so fearlessly and with passion. Don't allow anybody to intimidate you. Just don't. I have been so touched and I'm so filled with pride at how hundreds of thousands, not only, by the way, in London, in Manchester, in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, down south, up north, everywhere, week after week, across the UK, protesting peacefully in support of Palestine. Everyone should, of course, abide by the law. Everyone. And passions can and will run high, and the situation is very sensitive, but we must all act with restraint and dignity in order to best present our case and avoid giving anybody pretexts and justifications. That case is a matter of principle. Our case is a matter of principle. The principle of equal application of law. I will repeat it and keep repeating it. The equal upholding of rights and the equal protection of communities. All communities, not just the Muslim community. You must be in the forefront to defend all other communities, whoever they may be. There are chants sometimes in these demos, or some people are deliberately misrepresenting. That is their problem. But what we need to do with such chants is to be clear about what we mean here. The issue is with the occupier. I will repeat this, Zara. The issue is with the occupier, the colonizer, the besieger. The issue is with a government that has laid siege on our people and has imposed a system of racial domination, i.e. apartheid. The issue is not with a religion or an identity. It is not. Those who confuse things hurt our cause. They hurt our cause. And no one is allowed at this moment, at this very historic moment, when our people are being slaughtered en masse, to hijack the cause. Because the Palestinian people as a whole, those under occupation, those scattered in refugee camps in Palestine and the region, as well as those inside Israel, all suffer inequality. That's what we suffer from, inequality. All are denied our rights, legitimate rights, and all deserve to be treated with the full dignity of our human rights. So we talk about freedom, and freedom anywhere comes with equality. Equal treatment in law, equal treatment in rights. This is our cause. So please, anybody who wants to portray our cause in a different matter, go. This is not the place. This is not the place. And by the way, let me be very clear. I was so proud that the 300,000 in London, the hundreds of thousands all over the UK, come from all communities, And I've seen the leaders of the Muslim community. I've seen leaders and activists from the Jewish community. I've seen leaders and activists from the Christian community. This is a global movement for rights. This is the message that we need to relay to everyone, Zara and all my friends. And we need to be united. Speak in one voice. This is the major thing. This is a time when we are united and we speak in one voice. This is not a time for differences and divisions and small groups. This is a time when we are clear about our discourse and words, and when we are clear that this has to do with humanity, not with a religion.
Brilliant. A very, very powerful message, and you're absolutely right. I think this is a global solidarity movement, and one in which the cause can't be hijacked by other groups and fringes and people trying to monopolize it. I wanted to bring the conversation to something a bit different. Now, you're a man who's known to the media, and you're often the first one in the ring taking on some of the toughest interviews that we've seen. And all of us get a little bit anxious, and then we're slightly reassured when you do take the interview because, it's always sterling. You do an amazing job, mashallah, and you're someone that many of us look up to in terms of how you navigate. We know the tropes, the kinds of very loaded questions, the kind of pigeonholing of the cause. It's not 75 years of occupation we're talking about. People don't want to talk about the facts, the narratives. And I thought it would be really useful is a lot of our communities and young Muslims even and those aspiring to even be spokespeople, struggle and myself have to take some of these interviews. They're never easy, and particularly on topics like this one. And with what I thought would be really beneficial for the listeners here today is get an insight as to how tough has it been dealing with the bias, the tropes. For us now, we've seen Islamophobic headlines, the anti-Palestinian rhetoric. How do you cope with that from even a human point of view mentally? And also when you go in there, how do you address that? Okay, I know what I'm going to be up against. And we saw you on Piers Morgan, we've seen you on BBC, CNN. I mean, some of the most, I saw you on Trevor on Sunday morning as well, and they do come at you very hard, and it becomes like this pressure that you've got to represent the cause, and I think for those of us on the front line, it'd be really good to hear, how do you cope with it? How do you manage it? And how do you get that messaging across? What is those important messages that we need to get across? But I should also say, thank you from all of us, because you do make us proud, and you do restore a lot of confidence. And I think many of your arguments we've all used a little bit in our own interviews too.
Well, thank you, Zara. Well, this is my job. This is my duty as an ambassador and a representative of such a great nation, the Palestinian people. So if I do it right, nobody should thank me. And if I do it wrong, everybody should criticize me. But this is exactly why we're here and why we have representatives everywhere. It is to be the voice and to be the address for our people. The Palestine Liberation Organization, the PLO, is there as an umbrella for all Palestinians. And we have been through a long, long journey from the 40s and 50s when we were scattered as refugees. The militias of the Nakba have uprooted 2/3 of our people until we started a revolution in the 60s. And that revolution led to the world recognizing the Palestinian people, recognizing the Palestinian legitimate and sole representation, and then opening offices all over the place and embassies and missions, including in London. And I was in Washington as an ambassador before. This is a huge achievement. And by the way, that's why Trump closed our office, because he thought that was a big achievement for us. And it will be, inshallah, reopened one day or another. So this is our duty and responsibility. Having said that, dealing with mainstream Western media is really, really difficult, very difficult, and sometimes causes a great deal of feel of, that things could be better. The media is there to portray the truth, be neutral, be professional, be responsible, and be accurate. That's the role of media. And sometimes I do feel, actually, sometimes it's not the word. Most of the time, I do feel this is not the case. From our experience, media literally tries to frame the Palestinian story in a way that removes what we just discussed from the story, from the narrative, from the discourse. The media sets its moral compass and its even professional compass on a certain day, snapshot, so the 7th of October, but fails to put things into perspective. They repeat some of the Israeli talking points, and they strive so hard to always paint you as your lives do not matter as the Israelis. They always strive to paint you as the aggressor, as if we are the occupiers, as if we are the invaders, as if we are the aggressors, as if we are the colonizers and the besiegers. And that's why you hear all the questions you hear. They start with, do you condemn? Do you condemn? They know our position, and they know we have been for a long time, for 30 years at least, absolutely committed as Palestinian government, as Palestinian political system, and as Palestinian people. We have been committed to negotiations and nonviolence. We have been committed to international resolutions. The problem is not with the answer. Zara, if I may explain this. I said this to Trevor. The problem is not with our answer. Our answer is clear. We reject targeting civilians from all sides. We reject it as Palestinians. We reject it as Muslims. We reject it as Christians. We reject it as Arabs. We reject it as human beings. The problem is not with our answer. The problem is with their question. Because in the lack of them asking the same question to the actual instigator of violence, which is military occupation. Occupation robs you of your dignity, identity, robs you of your freedom, of your right to move, to work, to breathe. Occupation is the most awful thing. It is the beginning of every violence. It is the instigator of every violence. And then they fail to ask the Israeli representatives, ambassadors, spokespeople, never to condemn the 75-year-old ongoing atrocities, which tells you that the media is so deliberate sometimes in boxing you and in extracting from a Palestinian representative that our lives matter less. And I challenged them everywhere. Why didn't you bring me only a couple of weeks ago when the settler militias were wreaking havoc in the West Bank? More than 200 of our people in the West Bank were killed. Why do you always bring us only when Israeli lives are affected? So this imbalance of the media in every sense needs to be called out. And it's part of my duty to call it out. And I have had people misrepresent my words. In life, misrepresent my words and use that misrepresentation to actually go for a political campaign against me and against us, because I am a voice and I am here to engage politicians, engage ministers, engage the government, engage the parliament. They deliberately misrepresented my words, so they dissuade the government and the political class and the opposition and what have you. It's very dangerous. I have had people try to provoke me into saying things in the heat of the moment.
Yeah.
Just to extract anything from me in the heat of the moment. The intention is not to hear the truth. The intention in some of them is not to give their audience, their viewers, an opportunity to listen to our voice. The opportunity is to provoke. Let's get him to say something bad. So this is important for the 3,000 people with us today and for everybody, not to allow for that provocation to happen. And always to be on course, set on your language and on your I had people, Zara, trying to make me say things I wouldn't say. So there has been a desperate lack of context in the media, in much of the media coverage, as if Israel is just a normal country and there is no occupation, there is no colonization, there is no illegal settlements, no apartheid, no illegal treatment of our people everywhere. There's nothing. This is the starting point for media. There has been dangerous incitements in the media, dangerous headlines. And I'm not going to go into details now. Dangerous headlines trying to link Hamas to the Palestinian people, and then link Hamas to ISIS, and then link the Palestinian people to ISIS. And then, following the cue from Israel, the Israeli president a couple of days ago came out with the weapons of mass destruction thing and chemical weapons. I mean, hysteria. Media has to be responsible now, responsible, because what this could lead to is a green light and a cover for mass killings, mass destruction, mass expulsion. So media is important, and it all starts there, because once you are framed, Israel would not have been able to do all it has done over 75 years if it was not able to frame the story immediately. So this is the time that we stop this from happening. Too many journalists have allowed such propaganda to go unchallenged. Too many journalists are lazy and not doing their job. So yes, it is an uphill battle, a big battle, but sadly the situation on the ground is so desperate now, even the most biased media commentator can no longer deny it. And all of us are beginning to get the message through. Now, the first few days were awful. The demonstrations, the marches, the complaints to the media. Let me say this. Complaints matter. Sky received thousands of complaints over how I was misrepresented repeatedly on the channel. Thousands. And they were forced to correct their misrepresentation live on TV. So it works. These measures work. Use them, please, use them. Don't leave us alone. One letter can make a difference. And these people know that, if they are caught, they will have to come clean. They will have to apologize, as Sky did. And thanks to the lawyers, without mentioning names, who came in our help immediately from your community and beyond, who said, we will stop this. So we are not alone. We are not alone. So just as you would hold your politicians accountable, please hold your media accountable. Accountable to their own standards and professions, not ours. And if you don't like how they are presenting the issues, complain. You are a taxpayer. Make your reasons known. Make them think twice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have seen even ourselves the kind of Islamophobic headlines, commentators calling Muslims death cults. There's some very insidious associations being made with pro-Palestinian advocacy, waving of flags and chants. And I think you can see that there's just a direct narrative that's being pushed around this. And you're absolutely right. I mean, imagine seeing that when we all saw that apology. It's quite phenomenal. But it also shows you the damage done on all the people who hadn't seen that apology. And it's a constant attack. And I think I should commend everybody who is on here, because the way social media is now being used has completely changed the game. We are constantly seeing live streams of what is happening there, but also people are pushing, people are writing, people are tweeting, and people are sharing. And I think that can't be underestimated, the power of actually sharing the stories and not just allowing, as you said, one narrative to overwhelm all of us, and this is the way it is, and actually having good journalists that also offer challenge. And what we're seeing is mainstream commentators actually calling things out as well. It's becoming very difficult now to have one line. And I should also thank, our Centre for Media Monitoring and the teams who are also calling to account editors for their choice of words. And talking about, that engagement with MPs, we did a Right to Your MP campaign with 150,000 people sent letters to their MPs. Their inboxes were flooded. They had to respond. So that accountability is really important. So just moving the conversation on a little bit, I guess, there's something about, what happens next. And what we're seeing is maybe just 2 points to cover. There's some deep divisions that are being set or attempted to be set here in the UK between communities, that cohesion that we have built for generations, that importance of working with different communities, that interfaith solidarity, all these different things. There is challenges, but also in terms of what happens next. I mean, our political leadership have yet to call for a ceasefire. And there's still much to do in terms of, telling people the history. This didn't just start, 2.5 weeks ago. There is a bigger story here, and maybe even an opportunity and an important moment for how the story does change. There's obviously complete devastation happening right now. But I think now more than ever, there is a global solidarity and a lot of people really willing to be a part of that change across communities, across backgrounds. There is a huge kind of outcry in terms of international law and the fact that, war crimes are being committed, genocide. There is a lot going on. And I think a lot of people will be looking to you now as to, what are some of the things we should be thinking about in terms of what needs to happen next? How do we keep our communities together? And what are the kind of key messages that if people do take away anything from today that you think are really important for them to help all of us support you? Which of course is what we're all kind of keen to do.
Well, thank you for this question. Actually, you support us the most by keeping and maintaining and increasing the community's cohesion, really. And the Muslim community must be in the forefront of maintaining cohesion in communities and must protect all other communities. That's how you help us. Because this is our cause, because this is our call, because this is truly who we are. And by the way, let's once and for all challenge and end this narrative in the media and in some political discussions that British Muslims support Palestine because they are Muslims. We have to end this. This is false. Muslims support Palestine because they are human beings. They are people of principle. Because they are people. That's why Muslims support Palestine. And this is an attempt to paint Palestine as a Muslim issue, not a global issue. You've seen the 300,000. There were so many people from all backgrounds, from all over the world. Opinion polls show time and again, UK Gov and many other polls, that there is a broad support for the Palestinian struggle in this country. Broad, broad. This is not a Muslim issue only. It is a human rights issue. It's a human issue. It's about humanity. It is a human rights issue. As I said, this is not a religious conflict, my friends. It is a people struggle for our rights denied for 100 years. And making it a Muslim issue also is simply a way to buy all these media and by all these, attacks, is simply to, on the one hand, minimize that global aspect, and on the other hand, it plays into the Islamophobic narrative that those who support the Palestinian struggle are extremists. That's it. That's it. That's the whole thing. We must challenge that. We must challenge that. It is an attempt to divide us, to divide the communities, to sow doubt in your hearts and in our hearts and in the hearts of millions of Muslims and non-Muslim supporters in the UK. Please don't let them succeed. Do not let them succeed. All communities are with you, including the Jewish community, by the way. And I receive many letters of support, many calls, and I've seen many of them in the demonstrations. Do not allow them to divide communities. All communities need protection from prosecution, all of them. And all communities have the right to live peacefully without any targeting. Anybody who targets any certain community hurt our cause, especially us and our teachings as Muslims. And let me remind all of you and all of us here, the first serious hate crime since October the 7th was the murder in the US of a 6-year-old Palestinian boy. 6-year-old Palestinian boy. So we are at the receiving end of the hate. And we must face up against hate. And we must challenge those racists everywhere. Be it against Muslims and Palestinians, being against the Jewish community, be it against any other community. No, don't let them divide us. Don't let them divide you from the rest of the country. This is the attempt. You are part of this country, an integral part of the fabric of this country. And your voices are very well heard. You stand for Palestine like most people do, because it is a matter of humanity. It's a matter of justice and equality. And you, the Muslim community in the UK, you have also rights to be treated equally to all other communities. You must be treated and like all other communities. And we, the Palestinian people, also have the right to be treated equally to all other nations. This is it. This is it. And if I keep repeating one word in this conversation, it is that equality. Now, the Muslim community has made it. I mean, also we have to be to give credit when credit is due to the Muslim community as an integral part of this country. And I'm so proud as a Palestinian representative or ambassador to see that the mayor of this city, this great city, London, is a Muslim. The first minister of Scotland is a Muslim. The head of opposition in Scotland of Labour is a Muslim. And I see Muslim doctors, professors, barristers, name it, everywhere, in the media, in parliament yesterday, where I had a briefing, many Muslim MPs. So the community has made it, the presence, the impact, the integration is there. It's there. You don't need me to say integrate. You are integrated and you are contributing like never before to this country, to the stability and to the economy and to the science, to the education, to the innovation, what have you, of this country. All what we need to do is to protect that from those who want to undermine it and isolate you as a community. No, you are part of this country and you should be proud, I think.
Yeah, I mean, wonderful reflections, and you're so right. I think there's a powerful role that we have to play. I think the cause is one for justice and human rights, and it brings us all together. And I think that it's been phenomenal. Obviously, as a third generation British Muslim myself, from Scotland with our first minister, it is reassuring to see that actually we're in a different place in this conversation than we've ever been before. Just before earlier today, I was speaking to my professor in public international law. She taught me, we actually spoke about Palestine when I was doing my studies, my human rights studies. And I remember her saying to me, how complex this issue was. And she was laughing. She said, Zara, I didn't think that you'd be in the middle now. One of the most important moments of history as the leader of the Muslim Council of Britain. I thought, neither did I. And I thought, tonight I'll be speaking to the ambassador. So she was, well, you've done very well. So it's been a complete pleasure and honor, Ambassador Husam. I think for many of the people listening today, they've gained a great amount of confidence and reassurance. I think your messages have been really powerful. We are in an important moment of history in which we have to ask ourselves, what did we do? What did we say? How did we behave? How did we act? And I think leadership, exemplary leadership, is something you very much embody. So I hope you know that we do look up to you, that you have all of our support in terms of all the different aspects of the campaign, our prayers as well. It's not easy. And I know that, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot to carry on those shoulders of yours. But it gives us, I guess, immense delight and pride seeing that flag behind you and all that it symbolizes for the many generations that have come before us and come after us. So to be part of a little bit of that solution and step forward is something that we'll always endeavor to do at the MCB and all of us as British Muslim communities and beyond. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. I know you're a very busy man, a very busy ambassador as well. And in that spirit, I think from what everybody in the chat is really quite honored to have you. And I hope that you found the session of benefit and something that will continue the conversation on, I'm sure, as things continue to move forward.
Thank you very much, Zara. And I just want to end by saying how important what you're doing is, how important that we come together at this historic moment, and how important that while we are challenging all that is happening and all of our efforts to stop it, we also remember that we must turn this tragedy, this carnage, this pain into a momentum towards a political solution, into a momentum to create hope in the hearts of millions of Palestinians. And I think we can now. We need to be really fixated on a political solution. We need to be fixated on giving a different future for all these people who have been otherwise deprived of hope for a long time. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much, inshallah. Take care of yourself. I'm going to be inviting Tayab Ali to join us now, inshallah. And we'll leave you, Ambassador Husam. There was lots of questions, but I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to speak to you again. Assalamu alaikum, Tayab. Thank you so much for joining us.
Alaikum salam. Thank you for inviting me. Great to hear from you, Husam.
And just to introduce Tayab to those of you who don't know him, he is a partner and leading human rights lawyer at Bindmans and the director of ISG, the International Society of Justice for Palestine. Have I got that right?
International Centre of Justice for Palestine.
Centre for Justice for Palestine. Tayeb has acted in many of the most high-profile and complex criminal trials over the last 2 decades. He's represented clients in the Supreme Court, the European Court of Human Rights, as well as international political and legal institutions at the United Nations, International Criminal Court, and the African Commission for Human Rights. Tayeb was shortlisted as the Human Rights Lawyer of the Year in the Law Society's Excellence Award and nominated as Criminal Defense Lawyer of the Year. And he's regarded as ranked in band 1 of international law and chambers and partners. So basically, you don't really want to mess with him. But he's the perfect man for the conversation that we are about to embark on, which is regarding the legality of what is going on and some of the implications. And I guess the first question that I had for you, Tayeb, was, there has been a lot of talk about whether Israel has been committing war crimes. So to many people listening today, what is the position? Have we got some clarity on whether that is the case?
Yeah, I think just carrying on from Husam's points that he made, and before I come to the position with international law and Israel, I just want to make an initial comment. And it was really touching to hear Husam, as a Palestinian ambassador to the UK, speak about the Muslim community in the United Kingdom. And I felt really proud listening to him reflect on where we are as Muslims in different aspects of society in the United Kingdom, from the very top of politics and law and medicine and science, doing every job that is needed in this country, whatever that might be. We commit to those jobs we integrated, we did what was required of us. I was born in Yorkshire. I was brought up in Yorkshire. I'm in my profession, I'm considered one of the leading voices in criminal and international law. And I think one message I'd like to give to the people listening before we talk about the law is it's time to own this issue. We don't have to be apologists for being here. We don't have to apologize for having a view. We don't have to apologize for making the British values dear to us as Muslims in this community and thinking that actually they matter to us potentially more than they do to some of our politicians, which I'll come to in some of what I've got to say. One thing I want to make very clear to the people listening here is that if we as the Muslim community, and I'm speaking as a Muslim as opposed to a lawyer at the moment, if we as the Muslim community cannot get this issue right for Palestinians, then we will lose our rights and the ability to speak for our rights for generations to come. And what Husam is seeing is the success of British Muslims integrating in the UK will be undone forever actually, because the Palestine issue is one of the things that as human beings, as Muslims, we find really important and something that we need to really help with, not because we see Muslims necessarily being mistreated and subjugated, because we see human beings being mistreated and subjugated. We had the same kinds of feelings in other parts of the world, like the Ukraine, for example, where we saw people being occupied, people being killed by a larger power. We supported the rights of those individuals to not be treated in that way. So I just want to make sure that I set up by finishing off what Husam said and so explaining how important that is for us. We don't have to apologize for having the views that we have. And hopefully some of the questions that, Zara, you asked me and I answer will help fuel some of our advocacy and empower some of Muslims in this country and others that are listening in order to deal with our political, our politicians, our political class. So your question to me was about Israel and whether they were committing war crimes or not. Well, it's really important that when we apply the law as lawyers and as Muslims, we must do this without bias. It's really important. Because we accuse the international community of ignoring the plight of Palestinians. We've accused them of doing this for decades. Now, we can't be guilty of the same. So listen to me very carefully when I say this. We must be clear that the taking of life outside of the rule of law should be condemned. We say this. We say it whether it's a Palestinian or an Israeli that commits the crime. This is clear to us. The taking of hostages is a crime, and people should be released where they have been captured unlawfully. Now, just listen to what I said and see how easy it was for me to say. And it was easy for me to say it because it's the truth. We condemn unlawful acts as human beings, as Muslims, and as a lawyer, I condemn them, right? And this is not a trick question, because Ari, you didn't ask me that question, right? But I thought it was really important to answer it because a lot of the times people get a little bit worried about, oh my God, I'm being asked to condemn the killings of Israelis on October. It's easy to do. It was wrong. What happened to Israelis on October the 7th was wrong. We can condemn that. That's straightforward. That's straightforward. But then the question needs to be asked, if it's so easy to condemn unlawful acts that are done by Palestinians in that situation, why is it so difficult for many in the international community to condemn the clear violations of international law committed by Israel? Why is there not this equivalence, as Husam put it, this equality in application of the law? It's important to remember that the criminal acts of one party in any event does not justify the criminal acts of another and can never be justified on civilians that were not even involved in that in the first place. Palestine is a state party to the Rome Statute. Now, what does that mean? That means that it has accepted the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court, and any crime perpetrated in that region can be prosecuted at the ICC. Israel claims that it can carry out its huge bombing campaign on Gaza because of the actions of Hamas. Many Israeli commentators, supported by politicians, have argued that Israel can take any action it deems fit in response to the 7th October attack. This is not correct in law, and it fails to meet the test of distinction and proportionality in international law. The laws of wars are called international humanitarian law and require that a party to an armed conflict distinguishes between civilians on one hand and combatants on the other. Not doing so is a war crime. International law prohibits, I'm just making these points really clearly so people can understand what the issues are. International law prohibits a blockade of essential life-sustaining supplies such as food and water. Israel has done that. It is unlawful to prevent or interfere with the free flow of humanitarian aid. And Israel has done that. And sending 20 trucks in is a drop in the ocean by most UN commentators. It's not sufficient to save life in that region. It's unlawful to forcibly transfer civilian populations. All of these examples constitute war crimes, and the evidence is building that Israel has engaged in these activities. Finally, today, the United Nations Secretary General has confirmed that war crimes have been committed in Gaza. Perpetrators of these acts can and should be called out by all of us at every level, and politicians in our communities that say they represent us should do the same. We see universal condemnation in regards to what Hamas did, but this condemnation should not be conditional and for Palestinians alone. When Israel commits breaches of international law, these violations should be called out and condemned. It should also be remembered that the situation did not come out of nowhere. This October the 7th was not the first thing that happened in the Palestine-Israel debate. Palestinians have been subjugated in the region for decades. That can't be forgotten. The impunity gifted to Israel for decades can be seen now with the current attack on Gaza. And I'll give you an example. We haven't been, as lawyers, calling for accountability and justice in Palestine since October the 7th, or this recent attack in Gaza. In 2009, I was a lawyer leading a legal team where a British court issued an arrest warrant for war crimes against Israeli Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni for her part in war crimes against civilians in Gaza. That was in 2009. The cycle of violence that we are seeing now did not start on the 7th of October. Now, Tzipi Livni even was not prosecuted because the United Kingdom government worked so hard to protect her from accountability by issuing what was called a special mission immunity certificate. That was a significant cycle in protecting Israeli war criminals, or alleged Israeli war criminals, from accountability. And it's really important that we recognize that. That was back in 2009, over a decade ago. Israeli commentators have been warning about the danger of current far-right government and what it's been doing to Palestinians for the last couple of years. Israeli commentators told us that what we are seeing happening now was going to happen with Benjamin Netanyahu's government because he had joined forces with far-right actors in his government. And those actors put pressure on Palestinians in the West Bank, put pressure on Palestinians in Gaza, put pressure on Palestinians in Israel. And what we're seeing now is a failure of the political process in that region, which has led to another, not the first, another outbreak of catastrophic violence.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And I think what people are finding very difficult to digest right now is this kind of double standard of when does international law really apply and when does it not apply. And, you know, it kind of leads nicely into the next question, which is, I know that you've been sending a lot of letters to politicians regarding their complicit nature in war crimes. And just as we've been speaking, lots of people in the chat saying, well, doesn't this mean that so-and-so is therefore advocated for war crimes? So I think, you know, understanding now what it is and what it isn't and what the law is very clear about, I guess it begs the question now, are our leadership and politicians essentially advocating for war crimes? Are they giving the green light? And what are the implications for that? Because I know obviously you can't just, that also in terms is a bit of an offense too.
Yeah, well, legal language is very specific, as you know. As lawyers, we labor over every word we say, and sometimes think we're speaking of different language. Hopefully, I'm not speaking a different language today and people can understand what I'm saying. But political language is of a different order. It's something else altogether. Political language has the immediate power to change the direction of world events. It can cause people to die. It can cause lives to be saved. Simply spoken by politicians, it has an immediate effect on what people do, where they do it, and how they do it. And that's why we at the International Centre of Justice for Palestinians were gobsmacked, shocked, completely taken aback to see that politicians all around the world and in the United Kingdom appear to be irresponsibly, or at best ignorantly, greenlighting war crimes in Israel. So many members of our government and the Labour Party as well were clearly making statements that not only failed to condemn potential war crimes in Gaza, but were in fact encouraging them. Politicians were clearly stating that they supported Israel's unequivocal and absolute right to self-defense. And despite the United Nations and many commentators warning of the humanitarian catastrophe that would unfold in Gaza if Israel attacked, they remained mistakenly resolute to that position. So what we decided to do at the legal team in the ICJP was we decided to make politicians understand what their comments meant. And we decided to bring the law to their attention. In the context of war crimes, Article 25 of the Rome Statute makes it an offence to aid, abet, or in any way offer assistance, including encouraging a war crime. It was our view that what the British and other politicians were doing amounted to complicity in war crimes, and they could be prosecuted for it. So what we decided to do was to make politicians directly aware of it. So what we did was we served individual politicians, including in the government, including in the opposition, and we put them on notice that we intended to hold them directly responsible for the offences that they were committing, and sent notices that if they continued to be complicit in war crimes, by encouraging them, we would refer them to the police and or prosecute them ourselves. What happened after that was the narrative changed quite rapidly, and we saw politicians starting to realise that they had made this massive error. And we started to see some politicians, not all, some politicians trip over themselves to actually get the law right. And you've seen that at the moment. You've seen lots of social media commentary about where a politician has said one thing, then claimed he hasn't said it, and then later on another politician from the same party repeats the earlier mistake. And without having to name names here, it's very clear the kinds of people we're talking about. But we made the narrative change, but we still have some problems, and politicians are still making these grave mistakes. And some of the things that these politicians are writing in letters to the constituents is beyond disgusting, actually, where they're conflating civilians with militants on the ground in Gaza and effectively saying, well, you know, if they die, so what? And that kind of thing just can't be allowed. Now, the world is rapidly changing, and for my part, I don't want to support any politician. I'm going to say this again. For my part, I do not want to support any politician that is so politically blind that not only can they not bring themselves to do what's morally right, but they can't bring themselves to do what is legally right. We need better politicians. And if any politician claims not to understand what international law requires them to do, point to the Ukraine and say, you didn't find it there, did you, buddy? Right? And if you didn't find it difficult for the Ukrainians, why are you finding it difficult for Palestinians? What's the difference? We cannot afford for our politicians to ignore our voices on this issue, because if they don't hear us now on this issue, like I said earlier, they will not listen to us for generations to come. And it's incumbent on every single person listening to me today to make sure that they hold their politicians accountable for the things they're saying, hold their media accountable for the things they're saying, speak to their neighbors about the things that we're talking about, and make sure that people understand the difference between what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah, well, I think everybody on the chat has said well said and aptly put. And I think, you know, for many of us who have been watching, there have been some kind of jaw-dropping moments from our political leadership around things that are said, and really just quite unbelievable, to be honest, and their implications. And I guess the next question is really, you know, so what is the center doing about it? What are you doing about it? What can we do about it? I think maybe it'd be good for you to bring in the fact that it's still important to engage, obviously, but it's in terms of what does that engagement look like, that accountability look like. I know people are very frustrated, and there's still this kind of this idea, you know, like, what do politicians want? You know, this kind of loss of hope in terms of politicians, but they are still politicians. We can still hold them to account. But I think there's some legal tools also that you'll be wielding in terms of what else can we do about it, and how do we, like you said, that Ukraine example, such a powerful one for so many, because we can feel and see the difference. So I guess the question is, well, what are the plans in terms of what can we do about it, or what are you going to be doing about it next?
Well, I mean, ICJP is a very small unit. We've only been going for 2 years. We've been hitting way, way above our weight for the last 2 years. We have partnered on events with Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, many Palestinian groups, Al-Haq, to name one. which is something I want to talk about in a moment. So we have really made an impact so far in terms of the work we've done, but there's so much more to do. And, you know, this emergency situation that we're in now, we've launched a number of new initiatives, and there are a number of lawyers that I know that are listening here that are working with us at Bindman's as well as in ICJP to carry out legal action where legal action is appropriate. So I'm just going to run through a few of those. So at ICJP, we're supporting a judicial review by Al-Haq, Palestinian human rights organization, and Global Lawyers Action Network, which is a UK-based organization, against the Department of Trade. And that legal action is to try to prevent the Department of Trade issuing licenses for weapons companies to send weapons to Israel. And it's really important because the current weapons license criteria is not met by what Israel is doing. So there is good grounds that Israel is committing war crimes. We should not be supplying a country like that with weapons. And so we've actually lodged pre-action protocol in that judicial review, and that's with the Department of Trade, and we're waiting for their response. We intend to take them all the way through court if the Department of Trade doesn't cancel the weapons license. So that's an immediate, massive practical step that we've taken. We don't want British armament to be enabling war crimes against the Gazans, against Palestinians in Gaza. It's that simple, and no right-minded person should want that either. We're continuing to remind politicians around the world, not just in the UK now, what the law is and how they should deal with that. Where politicians are complicit in war crimes, we're writing to them to remind them of the law and tell them that we intend to prosecute them. Those hardened politicians that are continuing to break the law, or we think they're breaking the law, we intend to refer them to Scotland Yard in the first instance. If that fails, which it might, you don't know how active the police will be on these issues, we have the option of a private arrest warrant, and we also have the option of referring them to the ICC. Over the next few days, because there's so many issues with regards to protests, with people's employment, so many people are being infected in different ways because of what's happening in the war on Gaza. We're going to launch an advice support line. That's not really what we are designed to do, but we think because we're filling a gap in the emergency situation we're finding ourselves in, we need to give people in the community support when they fall foul of or they're attacked for whatever reason. So that's something else that we're doing. But most importantly, and this is really the purpose of ICJP, is we're engaged with people on the ground in Gaza, and we are currently gathering evidence with regards to the war crimes so that we can build a file and bring people that are guilty of that or suspected of being involved in that to account. And people say, do you think it will work? Well, we got an arrest warrant for Zippy Livni. I can feel a change in the world environment despite what our politicians and what Israel is doing. I think that what Israel is currently doing in Gaza is so massive that I don't think that even they can have impunity over what's coming. And if they start a ground war and 20,000 people die, which is a realistic possibility, and we're already on about 5,000 Palestinians that have died, I just can't believe that the international community would let that pass without an accountability structure coming. And let's not forget, the International Criminal Court has jurisdiction over Gaza. That's already a thing. So Karim Khan, who's a prosecutor, he's got an examination which is looking at the moment. We are supplying him with evidence. He can intervene, as he did in supporting Ukrainian prosecutions in the Ukraine. He can intervene in respect of these war crimes in Gaza. And now we've got the Secretary General of the United Nations making it clear that war crimes are being perpetrated in that area. It's really important that we support this legal action. And if you want to read more, I don't want to take all out the remaining time. We've got a couple of minutes left on this. But if you want to read more about ICJP, our website is ICJP Palestine. So it's icjpalestine.com. And you can read all about our work and donate to us. We need all the resources we can get.
Our team is going to put those links in the chat for you, inshallah. We definitely think people are really keen to support. We're coming to the last question, Tayab, and I'm going to double barrel it because there's some important things that have come in the chat that I think are important to share. So obviously, the critical question is, well, what is the solution? What can we do next? But I thought what would be really useful is bring the Home Secretary into this conversation, because we would be amiss without her involvement. Now, obviously, there is, I was speaking to the ambassador about it, there's a bit of a movement to curtail and stifle pro-Palestinian advocacy. And some people were saying, how much value is what the Home Secretary is saying matter when it comes to law? And can I wave my Palestinian flag? Can I protest? Can I chant? And I think we've got the kind of clarification on that. Yes, you can. but we're probably likely to see more from the Home Secretary in the coming days. I know there's more demonstrations planned, there's plenty more activism planned. So I think in terms of that, what is the solution? It'd be really helpful if you could bring in some of that for those people who do want to, continue to campaign, how to not be afraid. For some people, there's quite, their employers have maybe come down hard, or the social media is being watched. People are quite anxious, they're quite frightened as well. And I think maybe some kind of offer of reassurance, or just even being cautious and careful. The MCB's offered lots of guidance on that, which we'll share in the chat too. But maybe over to you, Tayab, in terms of those kind of heavier issues that people are really considering right now.
Well, I mean, Husam explained how proud he was of the 300,000 people that were on the streets protesting. Very little, if not no violence at all. Complete respect for other communities. Don't fall for the hysteria and the propaganda and the nonsense that comes from certain political actors trying to marginalize the majority of Britain's voice. Most people in this country support the position for Palestinians and Palestinian rights. That's just a fact. And you can wave your Palestinian flag, you can attend a march, you should wave a Palestinian flag, you should attend a march. Now, of course, as individuals and as Muslims and as members of the British community, we have to do this with certain things in mind. So if you see somebody who's not from the same community as you, don't blame them for everything that is going on in Gaza. Don't, like Husam said, there is a massive number of Jewish people in support of Palestinian rights, supporting my work. I deal regularly with Israelis on the ground in Israel, even now, that are supporting Palestinian rights and are talking in the most difficult circumstances in Israel against Israel's attack on Gaza. We've got to remember what Husam was saying. This is not a Muslim-Jew issue. It's a right-wrong issue. And there are people on both sides of that, from all communities, that take different positions. And so when you're out on the street and you're protest respectfully, which I know everybody's doing anyway. Ignore the small group of people that are saying stupid things. That's not helpful. Husam said that's not helpful. He's speaking on behalf of the Palestinian people. He's telling us that that's not helpful. So don't participate in that. And you have to be careful at your workplace, what you do at work, comply with your policies. I'm a lawyer at Bindman's. I run things past our what's called our senior leadership team when I have to do something, because I want to make sure that I comply with my work environment policy. There are different people in my work that work in different ways, and it's really important that you will respect other people. But going out on the street on a Saturday and protesting is crucial for us right now. And so you can maintain doing that. There's a very good legal team at Bindman's that have issued a blog. One of my colleagues, Jude Lanchin, wrote a blog about what can be done and what your rights are with regards to protest, and that's worth reading. It's on the Bindman's website. That's worth having a look at. And I say we'll be creating this advice line in the next few days, so if there are issues, people can ring in and get some advice. And Zara, just coming to your question, which is what is the actual solution? Well, let's repeat what Husam said. The first thing that we need is our governments and politicians is to follow the will of the people and to call for an immediate ceasefire. It's really important. One question that I would want to ask any politician that is not vocally calling for a ceasefire is saying, why not? Because not calling for a ceasefire means that you are saying it's okay to watch people continue to be killed. The only thing that will prevent people being killed in Gaza and in Israel right now is a ceasefire. That's it. Simple. Once the ceasefire is agreed, which can happen tomorrow, we can negotiate all the rest of the stuff with Israel and Palestine, and they can discuss and they can have whatever agreement they want to have in the long term. But the immediate and most important thing is that we agree a ceasefire. Now, it's astounding to me that politicians are finding it hard to call for a ceasefire. I find that nefarious. I find that wrong. But at ICJP, we have been working to promote one simple concept. And if the international community believes, as it says it does, in international law and democratic principles and the rule of law, then they should apply that standard without bias, clearly and equally, and not just when it's comfortable for them to do so. Israelis, Brits, Palestinians, wherever you're from, we can all agree that the first step to peace in the region after the ceasefire is to create a system of rule-based accountability that is applied by the international community equally to Israelis and Palestinians. Once we remove Israel's impunity and people feel that they have accountability through the law for their grievances, then we'll be in a position where people find that there is an answer other than violence.
Perfectly put, Tayab. And I think everybody has really said thank you so much for offering that clarity. It's 100% right. I mean, we need to be hearing the ceasefire right now, immediately, and we need to be continuing to hold our politicians account. We're so thankful for the work that you're doing and that the work that the centre is doing. It's not easy. Please, if you can, do support Tayab's work. We'll be sharing links in the chat. We will also send an email out after this with the recording as well. I want to just thank on behalf of everybody at Team MCB for our guest, the ambassador, and also to yourself, Tayab, for coming on today and sharing so much that you have shared. Now, the Muslim Council of Britain is doing our best to advocate for the cause for the people of Palestine, and we will be continuing these community briefing sessions. We'd really appreciate if you can continue your support, and we'll send a link to donate, pledge, and support us, because obviously there's a lot to do, and we'd really like to continue that work for you. I want to thank everybody who's attended. We've had over 3,000 people register for this webinar and many more who I'm sure will benefit from the recording. Tayab, thank you so much for your invaluable experience, insight, and just very, very poignant and powerful way that you have reflected what you've reflected today. We hope and pray, because that's what we must do, to God, that inshallah things will be easier, things will hopefully ease for the people of Palestine and their struggle and all that they're going through. I want to thank everybody on the team who's put this together. Do check out our guidance, our website, mcb.org.uk. We'll be sending an email after this with the recording and some useful links and information. But from all of us at Team MCB, thank you so much. Good evening and assalamu alaikum. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.